thank you for your leadership in this during this unimaginable tragedy.
An unimaginable tragedy that is the Biden administration. He was in, even for Joe Biden, rare form in Hawaii yesterday. I think ABC News loved it, though, didn't they? Joe Biden, I don't think there were any stairs to fall down, otherwise he likely would have. But he visited Maui and talked about himself a lot. He dredged up some of the Joe Biden classics and added one about nearly losing his Corvette to a kitchen fire many years ago. I know the fact checkers are not on the case, but we'll do what we can here. Happy Tuesday to you and welcome. I tell you, this guy, the Democrats have to be shaking their heads and saying, he's got to go. We can't go with this guy. He is now, and now we're screwed because our relief pitcher is Kamala Harris, and she falls down a flight of stairs just sitting in a chair, which Joe Biden more or less does as well. The Democrat Party is just in shambles. This administration is a mockery of a sham of an administration. And Joe Biden, you see him wandering off when, who was it? I think it was the Democrat senator from Hawaii who tried to speak to Joe Biden as he was wandering off with a blank stare, his mouth hanging open, away from the podium. It's like, would you like the water? You're like he's a 3-year-old. Can I get your sippy cup? Because, Mr. President, hey, wait a minute. Are you doing your impression of a jellyfish? Is that what's going on? Because not since Rich Little has anyone done such an amazing impression of a jellyfish. And he wandered off, honestly, looking confused and befuddled. And he got the names of some of the Hawaiian Democrats wrong. And did you see the mayor? The island of Maui is a county. It's not a city. But they have a mayor. And the mayor, it would be fair to say, is a Democrat, too. He was asked yesterday by a couple of reporters, because there are hundreds and hundreds of Americans missing. They can't find them. Were they swept out to sea? Have they been burned to ashes and reduced to nothing? And so reporters asked this guy how many children are missing. And he attacked the reporters. It was amazing. He's like, oh, yeah, there's one in every bunch. What, that asks a question? Is that these guys, they're North Korean in their political orientation. It's pretty amazing stuff. So we got Joe Biden going. Now he's back at the $18 million home of Democrat donor Tom Steyer, and in the Nevada side of Lake Tahoe, and where the Corleones used to vacation, of course. And this billionaire Democrat donor with his $18 million house. And the White House has told a lie. It'll turn out to be a lie. It hasn't been proved to be a lie yet, but I know it's going to be a lie. They said that the Bidens are paying fair market price for the house for a 1-week vacation. What is the fair market price for a 1-week rental on an $18 million house on Lake Tahoe on the Nevada side, belonging to a Democrat billionaire donor? What is the? We estimated yesterday maybe $135,000 for the week. That, based on what a rental of a $2 million house costs, say, on Lake Michigan or on the Outer Banks. But the lie will win. The lie will win today because, So a lot of good headlines for him, though. Joseph Antoinette Biden lies to survivors, makes it all about himself in Hawaii. Great headline from the New York Post, of course, not the New York Times. They think he did a great job. And his little Marie Antoinette thing, let them eat ashes, because Joe Biden, boy, it was really something there. Also from the New York Post, and not the New York Times, Biden recalls kitchen fire in attempt to console Maui wildfire survivors. And it's right. Many, many years ago, he claims that there was a fire in their kitchen, which was apparently under control in a few minutes. And he's like, whoa, I almost lost my wife and my
Make a long story short, I almost lost my wife my 67 Corvette and my cat.
And my cat, no joke. Hey, he did a couple of no jokes, and I'm not jokings yesterday too.
All kidding aside.
All kidding aside, Biden compares Maya Wildfire almost losing his 67 Corvette, which, that was a close call, I guess, with the 67 Corvette. Good thing that he didn't lose his 67 Corvette in their kitchen fire. Hey, what was the Corvette doing in the kitchen? Were you hiding classified documents in it? What was that doing there? And angry Maui residents slam Biden, hold no comment signs during the president's fire tour. The New York Post again, and not the New York Times or the Washington Post. Amazing stuff. We've got also tomorrow night is the big Fox News Republican presidential candidates debate. Go into the candidates debate. And the media, they're very angry about all this. They're very, very angry. But there is a new CBS News poll. Our media is the most corrupt institution in America. Keep that in mind at all times whenever consuming any media from any source. But CBS News took a poll, and they found that President Trump's support among Republicans has grown. It's bigger than ever. He's now at 62%. In fact, his numbers are bigger than all other Republicans combined, which is not good if you're one of the other Republicans. Pretty amazing stuff. So we got that and the big debate tomorrow. And President Trump has to turn himself into a jail in Georgia where they're going to mugshot him. And because they're fascists, it's the merger of state and corporate power. And the media's in on it. That's a vitally important element of today's Democrat Party fascism in America. Trump says he is turning himself into Georgia jail. He's going to do that the day after, probably the morning after the Republican candidates debate tomorrow night. President Trump, of course, will be, the word that everybody keeps using is counter-programming. He's going to be doing an interview on Al Gore's amazing internet, peace be upon him, on X. Everybody says we used to call it Twitter. Stop saying we used to call it Twitter. It's going to do it on X, which Elon Musk owns. And that infuriates the Democrats, too, because they wake up furious about something. And then when they open their eyes, they find something else to be furious about. But President Trump's going to turn himself in. And he's going to do it, probably the morning after the Republican debate. So that none of the media will actually be talking about the Republican debate, because we got that going for us. Also, I brought this in the other day, and I never got to it. There is a woman who self-describes as a liberal that was sentenced to 22 years in prison because she's a terrorist, a liberal and a terrorist. She's a Canadian, not even an American, lives in Canada, which is America's hat, as you know, and America's second, it's our largest national park. Canada's America's largest national park. And her name is Pascale Ferrier. And Pascale Ferrier is French-Canadian. She made ricin, the deadly nerve agent, at home and mailed it to President Trump. She had hoped to murder him. It's what you call an assassination attempt on President Trump. And she was sentenced to 22 years in prison a couple of days ago. And the news media doesn't care. They're not really covering the story. It's not really a thing with them. But this self-described liberal made ricin, which is pretty crafty. Must have had some good, high school chemistry or something like that. And she made ricin at home, which you can do if you'd like. I wouldn't recommend it. And she mailed it to President Trump because, guess what? She wanted to kill him. She wanted to murder him because she's a self-described liberal, and therefore she hates a lot. And this Pascale Ferrier, she 22 years in prison for mailing Donald Trump ricin. BBC is reporting it, but good luck finding it in the American news media. It's just a terrorist attempt, a deadly agent. And if you mailed it to the Biden White House, they'd first have to check and see if it was cocaine, because I don't think Hunter brings ricin into the White House, but it could be cocaine. So we got that going. Also, I've got a great story for you today. More than 24 women who used firearms to protect themselves against violent exes, criminals, over a 2-week stretch. You got restraining orders and things like that. criminals attacking women in their homes, and women using firearms to defend themselves against criminals, including exes, like ex-boyfriend, ex-husband, over a 2-week period. That's a story that CNN and the Washington Post won't be touching. That they'll treat that like ricin, because they treat that story about the ricin lady like ricin too, because they have no interest in that. Pretty amazing story. So I've got that for you today as well. And in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, where I live and from where I broadcast the big radio show right here, Washington, D.C. leaders pressed on why car thieves can't be held in jail after a stolen ambulance crashes into 13 cars. The person arrested in that case was a Democrat, according to police. He was a Democrat and self-describes as a liberal and votes for Democrats every chance he gets. And that's why the Democrats want to guarantee the vote to everyone in every jail and prison in the United States, because they know that jails and prisons are filled with Democrats that can't wait to vote for Democrats, like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, and maybe Kamala, because honestly, Joe Biden, and I posted a video a couple of months ago now, predicting, I'm not in the prediction business, but I made an exception in this case, predicting that Joe Biden would not be the Democrat Party's nominee next year, and I still believe that that will be the case. They are not on our side. The Democrat Party is not on the side of the United States of America. They're open borders, pro-crime, pro-criminal, anti-police, anti-U.S. military, unless you're transgender, of course. Oh, speaking of which, got more on that too, because crazy man, crazy. And judge debunks anti-trans rhetoric. They just say trans, and trans is a prefix, has many applications, many uses. They mean transgender when they say trans, but it's kind of an incomplete thought, which is natural, I suppose. Judge debunks anti-trans rhetoric. It's not anti-trans rhetoric. Delivering a win for Georgia transgender youth. As you see the people outside the building there's a guy holding a sign, Black trans youth are the future, on a rainbow sign. Black trans youth are the future. The future of what? They didn't say. But that was there. And that's because in Georgia, liberals want to convert little boys into little girls, and they want to convert little girls into little boys. The Democrat Party has a mania, an obsession with this. They're unwell, and that's as polite as I can get, saying that they're unwell. And they found a judge that sided with, let's sever the genitalia of little boys and little girls and put them in mayonnaise jars, put them on Funk and Wagnall's front porch, and see what happens then. Also, a young woman who was an athlete went to speak. She had a scheduled speaking engagement at a Davis, California library, a public library. She went to speak, and she believes that men shouldn't compete as women in sports. Boys shouldn't compete as girls in sports because that's cheating. That's what she believes. But as soon as she began speaking, leftists, who are apparently all suffering from gender dysphoria, stood up and shouted her down and interrupted her and forced her out of the venue because, they're fascists and they're suffering from some kind of a gender dementia. There's a lot of that going on. She believes that her First Amendment rights were violated. Her name is Sophia Lory, and she's great. She's wonderful. Also, the Democrats are planning on bringing back masks where they can. Remember the masks, the surgical masks and stuff that we later found out didn't work? They want to mandate them in a lot of different places now. Companies, colleges, they're coming back because Democrats don't care what you do as long as it's mandatory. They don't believe in you being able to make your own decisions, things like that. Update on rich men north of Richmond. Smart people and people with money fleeing New York and California for more civilized parts of the country. That's coming up. And why are cancer rates skyrocketing in the United States of America, especially among young people? I know Democrats, is that it's probably where it's going to lead us. Illegal aliens in New York City, and whether Democrats are making everything better, depending on the meaning of the word better. We are at 888-630-9625. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Book by this July 31st for extra savings. Visit chrisplantcruise.com. Now, we got Democrats setting fire to signs in front yards, and they love burning things, don't they? The left, they love setting things on fire. Churches and Trump signs and all kinds of things. Let's go to the telephones. Let's go to Victor calling from Silver Spring, Maryland. Victor, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Victor.
I've been listening to the sound bites of Biden making his pathetic, and I mean pathetic, statements in Hawaii yesterday when he went to Maui. All he thinks about of him is himself. I'm surprised he didn't mention his dead brother while he was talking about the fire in his kitchen and how he was worried about his 67 car and his cat. Didn't give a rip about the people. And, of course, the Democrats were mad, and they had their signs and everything. But these same people will vote the Democrats back in, so there you go.
Well, imagine if President Trump went to Hawaii, where there are still hundreds of Americans missing, and told little jokes and talked about himself and how he almost, but didn't, lose his Corvette 15 years ago or something to a kitchen fire, which probably didn't threaten his Corvette at all, and then do I'm not joking and I'm not kidding around and all this stuff. If President Trump had done this, the news media would self-immolate on the steps of the Supreme Court. They'd drench themselves in gasoline and light themselves afire with Zippo lighters like Buddhist monks, because they'd be so angry. But with the bootlicks that we have pretending to be journalists in Washington, in the White House press corps now, they just love it. They lap it up, don't they? And I tell you, Victor, I've got a bunch of audio for you of Joe Biden that I'm going to play coming up in Hawaii. And I got to tell you, if you're a Democrat, you're not embarrassed by this. You need a brain scan.
Yeah, absolutely. And wouldn't it be great if Trump decided to go to Mali and with a couple of plane loads of supplies? At least he went to East Palestine last February, and I know the left would go nuts over that.
Yeah, Joe Biden still has not gone to East Palestine, Ohio, either, with a train disaster with the hazmat and the entire town affected. But, he found out that they probably didn't vote for him mostly, so... Got that. Yeah, Joe Biden coming up, illegal aliens, open borders, Democrat news. Joe Biden, he left the $18 million home of Democrat billionaire donor Tom Steyer, who's a radical environmentalist. Took Air Force One to Maui, Hawaii, and stumbled around bumping into stuff like a jellyfish, which he is wont to do. Dr. Jill Biden, who's not a doctor at all, followed him around with a weird fake smile plastered on her face. And the headline, the New York Post, Joe Antoinette Biden, little Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake kind of thing. I texting with my brothers this morning, and one of my brothers said, apparently, here's the thing, Black Lives Matter, BLM, right? BLM, Black Lives Matter. And then they exterminate 40% of the black population in the womb, the Democrats do, and harvest their organs. But that's okay. Pay no attention to that. Then, of course, they create the school-to-prison pipeline, and then they try to get the vote to everybody in prison because they know there are so many Democrats in there. But I digress. So Black Lives Matter, BLM. But in Hawaii, we got 850 at least people still missing and unaccounted for, and well over 100 dead, confirmed dead, although they're not doing much of a job. They're not speeding along and identifying the dead, that's for sure. But it turns out that as much as Black Lives Matter, Hawaiian lives don't matter. Just check out Joe Biden and the Democrats and the media, for that matter. Hawaiian lives don't matter. So that's, what is that, Michael? HLDM. You got BLM, got HLDM, Hawaiian lives don't matter, because, your Democrats are in charge. And remember when President Trump went to Puerto Rico, and how much money was stolen of the relief money? Remember, that was a big scandal because in Puerto Rico we sent giant gobs of money under President Trump. And then we found out later that huge sums of money were stolen, siphoned off, disappeared, pocketed by crooks, Democrats. You know how they are. People in need. Hey, money over here, steal it. That goes on a lot. That's a thing. So you remember when President George W. Bush, President Trump, remember he threw a roll of paper towels to a guy in the back of the crowd. It was a densely crowded room. They were handing out supplies in the front, including paper towels. Guy in the back yelled, "Throw me some paper towels." President Trump threw him some paper towels. It was a good throw. And Democrats still attack him for that, like that was a big deal. The guy yelled, "Throw me paper towels." President Trump threw him paper towels. It was a perfect throw. Hit him right on the numbers. But that's no big deal. Also, I'm reminded, and then all that money disappeared in Puerto Rico, but pay no attention to that. President Trump President Bush with Katrina. You remember after the mayor there, C. Ray Nagin, said that they didn't need any federal help and it wouldn't allow the National Guard in, and Amtrak offered trains to bring people out, and he said no. And he said, this is Chocolate City and we're going to party. Remember that? And then the lower Ninth Ward was washed away when one of the levees was overflowed by the water, which is perfectly predictable, and everybody predicted it. And then C. Ray Nagin went to prison, too. I think he's out of prison now. But the Democrat mayor, who had all those bad ideas around Katrina but didn't take the fall at all. The news media is just a filthy, rotten, corrupt institution, and our country would be much better maybe without an official news media. The New York Times and Washington Post and ABC, CBS, NBC. We might be much better, CNN. We might be better off without them. But they're so corrupt that it'd be better if we just... I was talking to some friends at Newsmax about this yesterday. Why? And I believe this to be true, and I've talked about it before here on the radio. We, as a nation of people, are much more inclined to subscribe to conspiracy theories today than we were, I'll just say 20 years ago. I think probably 10 years ago as well, but certainly 20 years ago. We didn't subscribe to conspiracy theories the way that we do now. A great many Americans subscribe to, first of all, so many of the conspiracy theories of 3 years ago and of 5 years ago have turned out to be true. President Trump and the phony Russian collusion and all that stuff, the FBI, the intelligence community, and that the felonious 51 letter, and so many things that, that's a wild-eyed conspiracy theory, the news media will tell you, then it turns out to be true, right? But I think we subscribe to conspiracy theories more easily today with very good reason. And talking to Mercedes Schlapp and others at Newsmax yesterday, I said, I remember years ago when, like, the people of Russia, the Soviet Union, they believed in conspiracy theories like nobody's business. And you go to countries like Egypt, and people subscribe to conspiracy theories all over the place, and countries like that, we used to say. Now we're kind of a country like that. And the reason that people, the explanation I've always given, the reason that people in Russia, the Soviet Union, and Egypt would subscribe to conspiracy theories so easily is because they didn't believe a word that their government told them, right? Because their government lied to them all the time, and they couldn't believe anything the government said. And they couldn't believe a word that the media told them, and Egypt and the Soviet Union, and so on. And so people were inclined to subscribe to, the media would say word on the street, right? It made them sound hip, like they're using street jargon or something like that. Well, word on the street in Cairo is, and then they'd give you some story. And we'd, get the word on the street news from the news media, and in Moscow and in Iran and in places where the population does not believe a word that the government tells them and doesn't believe a word that the media tells them. So people would subscribe to, cotton to conspiracy theories. And we're in the same place now in the United States of America. People are inclined to subscribe to conspiracy theories, and then there's the internet layered on top of that, of course, where every wild-eyed theory is thrown out there for everybody to see, and then a lot of people are going to say, well, it makes sense, because I know what NBC is telling me is pure BS and will be proved pure BS later on. I don't believe the media. I don't believe what the FBI is saying. I don't believe what the Justice Department is saying. I don't believe what Adam Schiff is saying. I don't believe what Nancy Pelosi is saying. So when you can't believe your highest-ranking government officials, got your Governor Pritzker in Illinois, you can't believe anything he says. You got your mayor of Chicago, let's go Brandon Johnson, and you can't believe anything they're telling you. Lori Lightfoot, the mayor of New York, the mayor of Washington, D.C., can't believe a thing they're saying, can't believe what you're hearing from members of Congress, and they sit there with Chunk Todd on Sunday morning, and Chunk lies to you, and the member of Congress, Adam Schiff or Eric Swalwell, they lie to you. Nancy Pelosi, she lies to you. Joe Biden lies to you, and he doesn't even know the difference. And so we in America, we don't believe what we're being told by our government anymore, just like Egypt and Indonesia and Uzbekistan and the Soviet Union. We don't believe our government officials. We don't believe our news media anymore. And that's a problem. That's a problem for the proper function of our republic. That's a big problem. And we become much like a third world country. We would mock third world countries for subscribing to crazy ideas like this, right? But now we're there. You know why? The left is why. And the Washington Post is, of course, a prime example of that, aren't they? Now, the Washington Post has a front page story, their lead story attacking President Trump. Trump's rhetoric is legally thorny. Wait a minute, now the president's speech is illegal? Because in America, Deutschland über alles, Washington Post, and they got 3 Democrat Party hacks typing this up on behalf of their party. Tough to police in election cases. Wait a minute, we're policing rhetoric? Is that right? And that's right, that's the front page lead story. A-sectional. They have the metro sectional, the A-sectional. Trump's rhetoric is legally thorny. It is. Rhetoric in America, speech in America, a former president of the United States, possible future president, his rhetoric is being called into question. Tough to police. Really? We're policing political rhetoric? Sig Heil, meine Schatzi. His speech rights collide with court's protections. The left is here, and they're making speech illegal. I've been talking about this for many years now, since they started doing it on college campuses, right? But then below the fold on the front page also, 850 people still missing after Maui wildfires. That's the Hawaiian Lives Don't Matter. It's below the fold. There are no pictures. It's just, and then they praise Joe Biden. About 850 people are still missing after the wildfires that torched parts of Maui and devastated the historic town of Lahaina, according to local officials, with 85% of the disaster area searched as of Sunday. That's the Washington Post typing this up. Molly Hennessy Fisk is typing it up on behalf of her party, the Democrat Party, and in defense of Joe Biden and the Democrat governor and the Democrat mayor of Maui. The island has a mayor. It's a county, not a city, but they have a mayor. And boy, he has a Soviet panache himself. The latest official death toll in the deadliest U.S. fire in more than a century stood at 114, but the number was expected to increase as more victims are identified. 27 of the dead have been identified by Sunday, nearly 2 weeks after the fires. But officials had been unable to locate and notify relatives. They've been able to locate and identify relatives of only 11 victims. 11. 2 weeks later. Are they all super stoned on Hawaiian bud? They got like Maui Wowie is famous, one of the famous products of the island of Maui. Maui mayor, he's the county mayor, Richard Bisson, B-I-S-S-E-N, Bisson, posted a video online that he said was the first of many daily reports that will provide updates on the number of missing people. Initially, more than 2,000 people were unaccounted for, and he said that lists of names that families and friends had given local and federal agencies were recently combined and refined. Democrats always like to make things rhyme, don't they? So actually, let's go to this guy before we go to Joe Biden, because the mayor was outside, and some reporters walked up to him, and they asked him a perfectly straightforward question. How many children are listed as missing? How many children are missing? And he refused to answer. And they asked the question and said, come on, this is, answer the question. The reporter said, and the mayor, who's a Democrat and a self-identified liberal, Richard Bisson, he said, well, there's one in every bunch, isn't there? What, that would ask a question? So here's the Democrat mayor of the island of Maui being asked, how many children are missing and probably dead?
How many children are missing?
I wish I knew the answer to that. I would be happy to answer that.
You have no estimate as to how many children are missing?
I guess we can end this right now if you guys want. Sorry.
This is one of the biggest questions that the people of Lahaina have, but you don't want to answer.
It always takes one or two to ruin it for everybody.
It always takes one or two to ruin it for everybody. By asking elected officials questions about the hundreds of people that are dead, it always takes one or two. Boy, that's pretty amazing stuff. How many children are missing? Well, I can't answer that question for you. Well, you're not going to answer the question for me? And it always, and he says, I'm going to end this right now. I'm going to end this right. Why? Because someone asked a question at a press conference and you're an elected official standing out here? How many children are missing? It always takes one or two bad apples that, might ask a question. Isn't that amazing?
We could say that about you. You ruined it for everyone.
You're welcome to say it. You're the media. You can say whatever you want.
You're a disaster.
All right. Okay.
You've been the worst mayor we could possibly imagine.
You won't even wait.
Respect what? This is the most dismal response we've ever had.
You won't wait for your turn. You want to shout over these guys that are legitimate.
Why don't you give them the real answers then?
Why don't you give them the real answers then? Well, it's always one or two that ruin it for everybody. Is this like a kindergarten classroom? What in the name of? And that when you're a Democrat, you can give that answer. And if he were a Republican, he'd be national media all over the place. CNN would be bumper to bumper with this lunatic who doesn't care about human life and children, and that would be the depiction, of course. Pretty appalling. If only we had a news media, what would they do? Amazing stuff. Right, now let's get to Lunch Bucket. Oh, wait a minute. I can't get to Lunch Bucket, Joe, now. Look what I've done. I run the clock out on myself. I do that. I do that a lot, don't I? Yes, I do. Yeah, man. We are at 888-630-9625. Joe Biden still has nightmares. He almost, but didn't lose his Corvette to a kitchen fire many, many years ago. What was the Corvette doing in the kitchen? No one knows. Nobody asked. Angry Maui residents. President Trump update. What about that liberal woman that sent him ricin in the mail, getting 22 years? You think CNN's mentioned that, Michael? I'm guessing I know the answer to that. And we are at 888-630-9625. Yeah, Democrats, New York, illegal aliens, sanctuary cities. The Democrats are an open-air mental institution, and San Francisco is an open-air mental institution, and they're on the loose. We need more mental institutions because Democrats. All right, let's take a phone call, Michael. And we'll get to Joe Biden in a minute. I got to give it time to breathe because he said so many dumb things that I'm going to have to share them all with you in one serving. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Mike calling from Gainesville, Virginia. Mike, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Well, good morning, Chris. Good to talk to you.
Hey, Mike. What do you say?
Do you think nobody at the White House has told Joe that he shouldn't make these things about himself, that that's not true empathy to talk about the losses you've had in life all the time, whether it's Bo or his Corvette or house fires or dogs? that nobody really wants to hear that, and he just is inadvisable on this, that he just can't help himself, and he goes off script every time when empathy is required.
What do you think that reveals? What do you think that tells us?
Well, he's past his expiration date, cognitively. He's just incapable of being advised on what's the right thing to do in this situation. He has a fallback position of this is all about me, and let me show people that I've had hardships in my life, what he considers hardships anyway.
Well, and some of them, his first wife and little daughter killed when a truck crashed into their car and the other two boys in there. But what that has to do with a fire in Maui, nobody knows. He talked about that yesterday, and almost losing his Corvette to a kitchen fire. I mean, you're right, the lack of self-awareness and empathy. You used the correct word, I think, Michael. And the lack of empathy, his inability to comprehend what his role is in a situation like yesterday's situation in Maui is kind of amazing. And again, if President Trump had gone there and talked about himself and a kitchen fire 15 years ago, he would be shouted off the stage by the news media. They'd be throwing things at him. But with Joe Biden, they give him a tongue bath when he walks by. What's up with that?
And do you think not a Dr. Jill doesn't even try to tell him not to do that, or you just can't remember the advice he gets? That's the real question.
Or has she just given up?